Good evening. Welcome to the May 23rd, 22 meeting of the Marshfield Planning Board. The time is now 7:01 p.m. Tonight's meeting is being recorded by MCTV, and we're holding a live meeting via Zoom. Our members here tonight are Katie O'Donnell, Nick Papastratis, Fred Monaco, Kevin Cantwell, and I'm Mike Viviano, the chair. Also with us tonight is Greg Guimon, our town planner, and Karen Horn, our assistant town planner. At this time, I'll make a motion to open tonight's meeting and waive the reading of the notice. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred?
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. So the meeting is open, and first on the agenda, switch to that paper, will be our kickoff meeting with MAPC on updating of the economic development section of the master plan. And we're going to put this on Josh for the presentation.
Great, thank you, Chair. Good evening, everyone. Josh Fiala, Principal Planner at the Metropolitan Area Planning Council. Pleasure to be with you all this evening. I'm joined by my colleague, Sukanya.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sukanya Sharma. I'm a Regional Land Use Planner within the Economic Development Team at MAPC.
Hello, welcome.
Happy to be here.
Thank you very much. So I've shared my screen now. We just have a brief presentation to lay the groundwork for the economic development plan that's underway now, and then have a few questions and prompts just to see if there's some discussion items that the board might like to share with us, some priorities and direction. So our very brief agenda is to give an introduction to ourselves, give a little background on MAPC, talk about the purpose and goals for the study, the timeline for the study, and then we'll, as I mentioned, talk about some of the priorities and guidance. So if you don't know or aren't familiar, MAPC, the Metropolitan Area Planning Council, is the regional planning agency for the greater Boston area. So we include in that region 101 cities and towns, which Marshfield is a part of. You can see yourselves outlined there with all of the other colors. Basically within the 495 belt are communities within the Metropolitan Area Planning Council's planning region. And we provide technical assistance by the way of planning with our staff. I'm in the land use department, Sukanya's in the economic development department. I'm a principal planner. I've been with the agency a little over 6 years now and have been a consultant planner and architect prior to that for about 20 years around the greater Boston area. So we're happy to be providing the technical services to the town, in this case for the economic development plan. And the economic development plan really is focused on putting together recommendations that will support economic activity in the town, the commercial tax base specifically, and making sure that that is a part of the planning and strategies and priorities moving forward. And then also thinking about where future development and how that might occur with commercial and residential uses in the town. We're looking through this effort to provide a solid background and foundation of data and analysis, and then work with the community and yourselves to frame goals and actions that will help facilitate future economic investment in the town. We have a few geographic areas of focus. Basically, the shorthand of the focus is really looking at the non-residential zoning districts within the town. And that includes the downtown or the B1 business mixed use zoning district, west of downtown, the B2, the business highway zoning district, the industrial parks, the I1 industry and PMUD, the planned mixed use overlay zoning district. And then looking at the B4 districts, Brant Rock Village, the Green Harbor Marina, and the other smaller districts. And then also the Town Pier and Blackman's Point, which are R3 districts. So that really is the focus in terms of the areas, but overall the recommendations and policies that we'll be thinking about through this effort will be impacting and looking at the entire town. Here, if you're better with maps, here's a map, which I'm sure you're all very familiar with, but the zoning map of the town, just highlighting those districts on the map. So basically anything in the non-yellow colors are the non-residential districts, as you all know. And here they are highlighted again in the blue tones. And so these are really the geographic focuses and those economic drivers for the town where you might see more of the activity occurring, more investment, and looking to shape how that investment might occur through this planning process. So our work plan is very straightforward. We have 3 tasks. We're in the first task now. That first task is really looking at the existing conditions of the town, a variety of market analyses and data collection, which we are well underway with now. The next task will build upon that foundation of data and really lean and turn toward the community and defining goals and strategies with the community. And then finally, turning towards wrapping all that together into a document and final report with recommendations to the town that will provide an updated economic development approach. Here's the overall timeline that goes along with those tasks. We did get underway in April with the kickoff with your town planning department. And then we've also been looking at previous documents, gathering data through census, through CoStar, and other data sources, and then starting to bring that all together in a summary document, which we can draw some initial conclusions from and frame some discussion with the community, which would occur in a community workshop, which we're targeting for the month of August at this point. We have a few dates which we haven't settled on yet, but thinking that that might be a decent time. We're happy to accept some feedback on that, if how you all feel that an August meeting might work out. And then from there, we'll basically be coming back, hopefully, to the planning board and reporting some findings from that, pivoting towards task 2, which would be the beginning of defining goals and recommendations, bring some preliminary recommendations and frame those out, and bring those back to the community in a second workshop, which would happen later in the fall, probably in the November or so timeframe, with another check-in with the planning board around that time, and then turning toward 2023, the beginning of the next year, where we would finalize recommendations in a summary document and report, and present that back to the board at the end. So there are a wealth of previous studies and plans, which we've been diligently mining for relevant data and information, and just to see where the planning efforts were relative to economic development in the past. So we're working our way through each of these documents, and we'll include a brief summary in our write-ups for each of them as we get through them. We are focused on a few documents as the principal resources in this effort. So the most recent, the Rapid Recovery Plan effort, which occurred under the DHCD program in the past year at Brant Rock, the multi-hazard mitigation plan, and thinking about the risks defined and associated with that planning effort and how that might relate to the economic development of the town in the future. The housing production plan, which was completed in 2019 and still very relevant and a major part of the South Shore Chamber of Commerce efforts around housing in the region, and thinking about how that housing production should be occurring. And then finally, looking back to the Marshfield Master Plan of 2015, prepared by VHB, who were basically building upon that good work the town has already put forward, and thinking about how the economic development chapter of that master plan, the recommendations that came with it, need to be either updated or carried forward or potentially built upon. So with that brief introduction, we're happy to take any more specific questions that this might raise with the board. But we also had a few prompts that we would be interested in hearing some discussion on. And I'll just read through those briefly. But the first is asking if there's any specific economic data or information that you're interested in this time period. If there's a particular resource or data item that you're interested in, we can certainly add that to our list and make sure that it's covered in our analysis. The second would be if there are any particular focus areas, if there's been a hot spot in terms of geographically in the town that you would like us to pay particular attention to, if it's one of those areas we've highlighted or maybe a different area. And then also topically, if there are hot topics in the realm of economic development that have been occurring in conversations through the town, those would be good for us to know about and to consider as we begin to frame out the discussion with the community later this summer. And then finally, if there are town priorities that you all are trying to move forward and how we can begin to think about and incorporate those priorities. So with that, thank you very much, and we look forward to a brief discussion.
Okay, thank you, Josh. Greg, did you have any comments at this time?
Nope, we were going to hold and let's see what the public and other town officials have to say. I would remind people, if you have your video on, you could either raise your hand so we could see it on the screen, or you could use the reactions down at the bottom, and there's a raise hand function, and that way Josh could see that you either have a question or comments. I don't see anything on chat, Josh. And so far, I don't see any hands up.
Greg, it's Jeremy.
Hi, Jeremy.
So I guess, you know, the Economic Development Committee over at the Chamber obviously has done quite a bit of work on this over the last 24 months, 5 years or longer, if you want to really go back. Are we going to schedule separate time to sit down and meet one-on-one with this team, or should we prepare comments for a public venue?
Public comments are always good. We can schedule a meeting, the planning staff. We could schedule a meeting with you and your group and Josh. Sure.
That would likely be more productive than this evening. I think, Josh, you guys have captured the geography well. I think there's probably a lot of nuance in different projects that have been looked at conversationally over the last, call it 24 months, and things have evolved a lot since COVID and now the breakout from COVID. So definitely a dynamic conversation. The Chamber itself hasn't had anything in front of the planning committee in quite some time. The planning board's done a great job of dealing with the day-to-day, and actually I think the Chamber would really love to hear the planning board's thoughts on where they'd like to see town go.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy. So it looks like we'll probably end up with a smaller meeting between the Chamber and Josh's organization there. Maybe Greg and the staff can be involved in that as well.
That would be awesome.
I see Mike Moresco on here. Do you have any questions or comments at this time?
I'm good right now, thank you.
Okay, thanks for
Sure.
being here. Any other comments from the board at this time? Katie?
I guess I would just put out there, I was taking notes going through this and looking at those kind of 5 top priority areas. I know that number 4 was Brant Rock Village and Green Harbor Marina. Number 5 is the pier in Blackman's Point. And like those jump out at me with the work that we've done talking about like hazard mitigation and coastal resiliency. And so while the economic development plan is being developed, I'd be curious. I know that a lot of times we're talking about like fixed development, where the planning board, that's what we look at a lot. But I'd be very curious at what we can do to foster economic opportunities that perhaps are not fixed along the coastline, so that we are not promoting building things that are then going to take huge amounts of upkeep and protection as sea levels rise and we deal with increasing storms and hazards of that like. So.
Okay, thank you, Katie. Anyone else from the board have any comments at this time? Seems like we do not.
Okay.
All right, Josh, anything to
on
follow
chat.
up with?
Nothing on chat, Mike.
Okay. Yeah, I was looking around. I don't see anything there. Josh, I appreciate you coming in for this initial, presentation. And I think there's going to be quite a few more meetings between us and you, and hopefully get together with the Chamber as well, and we can all get together and move this forward. So
actually, if I can pop in, sorry, really quick too, is that I know that the Chamber talking about having, some face-to-face meetings, I think would be great, but I think it would also be great to hear what, the Chamber thoughts are in a public planning board meeting as well.
I think we'll get to that once Jeremy has his ducks in a row with everything he's learning.
Yeah, Mike,
fair.
Mike, really appreciate that. And Katie, more than happy to put together public comments. Wasn't expecting the prompts this evening to dive into a deep discussion on it.
not
Obviously
at
was
all.
running a practice tonight and don't have my notes in front of me, but happy to dive into a lot of details on the projects that we've been looking at over the last bit. There's significant amounts of work we've done, so happy to share that.
Great.
Yeah, that'd be great. Maybe once you get that down on paper, you could send it to the planning department as well, and it can get circulated to all of us.
Sure thing, Mike.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak on this matter? Okay, seeing none, I'll say thank you again, Josh, and we'll be talking soon.
Thank you. Looking forward to working with you all.
Okay, thank you. All right, next we're going to move on to the, so I'm going to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for the WRPD special permit and the OSRD special permit for Red Gold Farm. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye. Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Nick Papastratis, aye.
Fred?
Fred Monaco, I.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Scott?
Scott DeCastro, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. So we're going to continue the public hearing now for that special permit and the OSRD for Red Gold Farm. And I think I saw
Gabe is here, and I thought Kevin Sealand is here as well. Gabe, do you want to share screen?
Yes.
All right, I made you
One-
public. Is there anyone else that needs to share a screen? Rick, or is it just you, Gabe?
All right.
And Kevin Sealand's here. Mike,
Yeah, hi Kevin, how are you?
Aye.
It
Gabe,
says
so it's up.
posted-
Yeah, you can, let us update the board and everything. They do have a draft decision as well in front of them.
Yep. I actually can't share the screen yet. It says host disabled participant screen sharing.
Oh, all right, let's try it again.
All right. Okay, got it.
Good, thanks.
So here is the final plan of Red Gold Farm, the OSRD, WRPD. We went back and forth a little bit with Greg Karen. They've been Bill Grafton over at Concom to get to this final plan. Out of the changes from the last plan we submitted, this first sheet now shows the trail system that we are proposing, and also changed some notes up here in the plan up on top. So we went back and forth a little bit with nitrogen loading calculations. In the end, we all agreed that individual lots will be limited to 12,000 square feet of lawn area, or a denitrification septic system shall be installed. This complies with all the regulations and all the numbers, and yeah, that'll be ready to go. Apart from that, the other smaller changes that were done, now we have this line indicating that these two lots are now going to be merged. There is also a note that states that there is no residential use for this house. It'll be used for bog operations and whatnot. So that's pretty much all the changes we had from last time. If there's any other questions that we are open to listening and answering.
Gabe, could you just focus in on the existing barn and the metal barn area and just refresh people what's going on with that area?
Okay. So this is the existing barn right now, and we are keeping that barn as is. So we located the first lot just above that, and I'm frozen here a little bit, so can't move. There you go. So here we could see that we have the two lots outside of where the existing barn is staying. We're just grading around a little bit, but we're keeping it pretty much the same. And then the other barn is going to get removed. There is no provision for relocation of that.
Do you want to just scroll to your north or your left, just to show the residents that are on Moraine Street that there are no houses or anything, and that's now all part of the open space?
Yeah. I'm sorry, could you repeat that again?
So in the area behind the existing houses on Moraine Street, at one point there were house lots, and at one point the metal barn was going to move over there and stuff. None of that's now
Actually,
it's now going to.
Oh, no. The area behind Mr. Sullivan's house is going to be pretty much left the same. I am looking for that. Well, actually, we didn't even include this area in a separate sheet because there's nothing to be done.
No lots on it anymore.
Yeah.
And then final thing, Gabe, if you could show the end again by the pond, that with the OSRD, you're able to reduce the road length and the lot sizes. So now those houses are not going to have backyards going all the way to the cranberry bogs or to the pond.
So are we talking about these two lots?
Yeah.
Lot 10 and 11?
Yep. Actually, even the ones on the cranberry side. So the lot sizes are much smaller and you're nowhere near the pond.
Yeah, we reduced the lot sizes, and what we wanted to do pretty much is to stay away from as far as we can from the bog and the pond. So we just fix all the lines now that we could have pretty much half-acre lots instead of the 1 acre lots that were originally proposed. And I'm frozen again. Sorry about that. So we can see it here now. There are no lot lines on top of the box. So everything has been removed from the box. And then up on top, originally this lot actually got into this
little
hole, if you want to call it. Yeah, no, we could remove that area off the lot, and it's a lot better for everyone. And we are actually assuming that the pond has riverine characteristics. We're not saying it officially, but we are treating it as such. Therefore, we have a 200-foot assumed riverfront area where we are considering some disturbance around that area. This is more a Concom thing, but by doing the OSRD, it really helped us to stay away from that riverfront area. So it's the OSRD, we believe it's a benefit in all fronts.
Are you all set, Gabe?
Yeah, if anyone else has any questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
All right, Mike, one other thing, or a couple other things I was going to bring up. The original draft that I sent you guys, the condition 6 on the bottom of page 5 is no longer necessary because they had done the changes to the plans that Pat had asked for. The one outstanding question was, Gabe had put in a short section of sidewalk. In our previous decision, the board did not require any sidewalk. They are doing a lot of off-site work, including 1,060 feet of sidewalk on Webster Street, 900 feet of trail work on the north side of the property, and 750 feet of trail work, including elevated walkway on the south portion of the other side, Eversource property. staff's recommendation is not to require a sidewalk. A couple of times during the course of the permitting, it had come up as, do we want it? Do we not want it? So they had put it on the plan because I had mentioned to them that I had heard that one of the board members had considered it and stuff. But as far as staff's concerned, we are not recommending the sidewalk, but that's something that the board would have to decide. And that's under the OSRD part. And as I mentioned on the WRPD part, the 12,000 square foot lawn size covers us. And if somebody wants a bigger lawn, that they would then put in a denitrifying system, and that keeps us just under the 5 parts per million. And then the one condition that Kevin had got back to us was his request was, could we have lots 19, 20, 22, which are all frontage lots on Moraine Street, which is Route 3A as well, be released prior to the base coat and drainage work on Red Goat Farm Road, which typically we don't allow lots along on the subdivision road where the base coat is in place and the drainage is in place. But since these are frontage lots, staff is okay, and that we added in that new condition that said that because they're frontage on 3A, that those 4 lots could be released prior to the actual Red Gold Farm roadway work being undertaken. Kevin, is there anything else that we should be bringing up?
Yeah, the only thing I noticed on page, can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, page 6, item 12. It's under the list of prior to start of construction. On 12, I thought that conservation restriction was going to be put in place after. You still want that prior to? And I thought you were going to work on that end.
Yeah. So for the board members, my thought was they're turning over the land to the Town Conservation Commission. The selectmen would be working on the lease arrangements to keep the cranberry bogs in operation. The conservation restriction would be then something that we would carry forward with the Conservation Commission. Since Kevin had turned over the land, we don't need him necessarily to lock in the conservation restriction because he won't be owning that land anymore. It will be the town of Marshfield's Conservation Commission. We're not sure that the Audubon or the Wildlands Trust would take it because it doesn't abut any of their existing parcels, but it does abut King Philip's Esker, which is town conservation land to the northwest. So on condition 12, we could either strike condition 12 or I could rewrite it to say that that would be the responsibility of the Conservation Commission.
Are they,
I know Katie feels strong about the CR, so.
I do. I feel that there should be a CR and that it should be held by a third party. If it's coming to the town can't hold a conservation restriction on itself. But I don't know if Fish and Wildlife would have any interest as well. But I also know the conservation restrictions take a long time. And so I don't think that that would have to be something that had to be in place prior to the start of construction. I think that that would be too much. It takes a while to get conservation restrictions in place. So
I guess I would leave it then, if it's all right with you, Katie, is that's something that the Conservation Commission will undertake because Kevin will have turned over the lots, or he will turned over the open space to us by the time he gets his base coat and he's getting other lots released on Red Gold Farm.
Yeah, I mean, that's agreeable with me. So before you release any lots that don't front on Moraine Street, I'd have to sign a deed. Right?
Yep.
Okay.
Is there any funding for a contribution to a conservation restriction?
I just hit the mute button on that one.
Greg, how have we done it before in the past?
Well, sometimes the Open Space Committee has gone to the CPC. Adelaide, the land got turned over to the town of Marshfield Conservation Commission because we could not find Audubon or Wildlands Trust. Nobody would take the parcel.
Katie,
So
what's the difference between conservation taking it over and having a conservation restriction?
Largely monitoring, and having a third party can be helpful. Like, we have all of these new houses, right, coming in. Sorry, I'm pointing at my screen and you can't see it. But, when we have more abutters, is that for a conservation restriction, if it's held by an approved third party, they have to monitor the bounds every year. And so somebody goes out and makes sure that we don't have any encroachment coming onto town-owned property. And I think it's also helpful in regards to having that third party who can help with enforcement, instead of just like, and I'm not talking about here because these houses don't even exist, but sometimes when you have an abutter or in the town and there's kind of a back and forth, having a third party there to say like, no, this is the legal agreement, this is the restriction, you can't dump all of your lawn clippings on town-owned land, you're encroaching, you've cleared your lawn too far. It's really helpful to have a third party. I mean, we just sat through town meeting and we hear about how short-staffed so many of our departments are. So a lot of properties are not able to be monitored on an annual basis. And so when you have a conservation restriction, it is monitored in perpetuity annually. So I think it gives a lot of long-term protection to the open space. And this is a big parcel. I think that having that kind of assistance for the town would be very worthwhile.
That makes sense. Thank you for that explanation. I never really thought about the difference there.
Yeah, it's annual monitoring in perpetuity.
Yeah.
Which is pretty cool.
That's a big one.
Katie, what if we change 12 to say the Conservation Commission and the Planning Board shall work on filing a conservation restriction with the Registry of Deeds, something to that effect?
I suppose it just seems a little different than like other conditions we've had in the past. Can I think about it for a minute? Is there anything else?
Yeah, no, you can think about it.
That's fine. I have another question we can go on to. I guess Kevin or Gabe, when we originally spoke about this is still a private road that's going to be privately maintained for the foreseeable future. Correct, Greg?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
I still don't think we've seen any kind of association documents that need to be in place to notify and get these residents organized for such a thing. And we've had issues in other subdivisions where a lot of the owners say they never knew it was a private road, and that has led to other issues. So have those been drawn up yet?
No. I talked to Greg about that today. I was going to get him some kind of draft copy this week.
Okay.
But you make a good point. It's true. I make sure, and other projects, I make sure that the buyers are well aware that they're going to be responsible for the maintenance, the ongoing maintenance of the road, which can be substantial repaving, and so on and so forth. So it's a good point.
Greg, is it possible to condition the decision as well as every lot that's sold should sign some kind of notice and the notice be dropped off to us?
We've
Just
never
even if it's
done
a
that
one-
before. I'm gonna have to ask Bob Galvin on that one.
I know we haven't done it before, and I don't think it's that difficult to get one, quick disclosure page saying that they received the documents from the seller and they understand that this is a private road. That way, when they come back to us and say, we didn't know, or maybe they're the second owner, which they may not get that notification at that time, but I feel like it's just a way for us to, guarantee that each new owner, at least the first one, is getting this notice that it's a private road.
Yeah, Mike, I like that idea. It actually protects me too.
It could, yeah. They don't have to come back, and it's not your word against theirs at that point.
Right.
Yeah, and
So, Kevin, are you okay if we hold again, for the lots fronting on Red Gold Farm Road? Because we have a condition 9 already that says the applicant shall record a Form D covenant issue, the documents for the declaration of homeowners association, et cetera. So I was thinking of putting it in there and just say prior to the release of any lots fronting on Red Gold Farm, you would have your association language submitted and that you'll have the forms prepared that will have sign off.
Like a disclosure type of.
Disclosure sign off.
Sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
And I think too, Kevin, when you're doing those documents, which I want to, I'll take a look at them. I've done a lot of work on those. Just make sure you put in some careful thought of when the subdivision actually turns over with a timeline and or a number of lots that are already sold. I know you've dealt with that before.
Yeah, we have. It's usually tied to a percentage of completion, sales, I should say.
Sure.
But, I'll take a look at that. I actually like to hold on to as much as I can for as long as I can on these things. It just makes the process simpler when I do finally turn it over. But let me take a look at that.
And that's up to you. I mean, you're the one writing these association documents. If it doesn't turn over until every lot is sold, well, that's up to you to put that in there.
Well,
often it's 50 to 75%, somewhere in there.
Right. I've got to talk to my attorney about that too. There may be some state statute regulations that I know there is for condominiums.
Yep.
I just don't know if it would be for something like this.
It's a little different.
Right.
So yeah, if you could send those over and I'll take a look at them for that as well.
Okay. All right.
That was the only big question I had on that. So I'm glad that will get worked through. Katie, did you put thought into your issue?
Yeah, I think if it's planning boards, it's our conditions. So I think that if we kept that, we'll look into the conservation restriction process. I think it should be put out to multiple agencies and see who would be interested in holding it and pursue that process.
But would it be a condition or is it something you want? Because it's not something Kevin would be doing.
Yeah, and we want it to transfer, but I want to make sure that it doesn't go to the town without the town putting a CR on.
Then is it a finding?
I don't know.
I thought we couldn't do that, Katie.
What?
I thought the town couldn't take it and then CR themselves.
No, we can't. So I don't want it to be that, like we've said, that the condition of this is that it's going to be a conservation, that it's going to hold a CR on it. And then if it goes to the Board of Selectmen, they're not bound by the conditions of the subdivision plan. So they wouldn't. How do we ensure that a conservation restriction goes on the property?
Well, what if it comes down to the other issue like Adelaide, that no one would take it?
But Adelaide's a little different, for one thing, because there aren't, correct me if I'm wrong, but there aren't, are there many public trails or?
Yeah,
public
there
running.
is now a public trail running right through it, connecting it to the Webster Wilderness.
Okay.
But there wasn't when it was initially filed and stuff. We've been working on that since.
Yeah, so I think like that could be part of it. I think where this is very clear, this is not only going to benefit this one neighborhood, it's going to benefit the whole town. And, you know, there's a lot of activities being proposed here as well with like the continued farming and the trail connections and everything. And
So Katie, if we put it as a finding that the planning board will continue to pursue getting a conservation restriction placed on the property, we can't guarantee it, because if Audubon and Wildlands Trust and everybody else says no, then we're going to have to leave it as Conservation Commission / Open Space Committee. They're the ones that are in charge of the property. The lease arrangement for the cranberry operations would be through the select board.
yes, and I guess without saying anything about any current boards, I'm not being disparaging, but I'm thinking 50 years down the line is what's going to protect this property. And I'm worried about changing with boards and who is in control and what the state allows. You know, sometimes we say, oh, the state doesn't allow this now, but what are they going to allow in 50 years? And I try to think about, you know, further down the line, and how are we going to ensure this property remains open space? How will it be protected?
The tricky thing is, though, this is the document of what Kevin needs to do to get this going. But
I know.
if he's not the one doing the CR, then it's a bit of a problem.
No, I view it, I agree with you, Katie, but I view it as an extra insurance policy. I mean, you've still got your wetland bylaws, you've got the Conservation Commission. It's really an extra measure. It's a smart thing, but it's possible that no one will step up and do it, or the money won't be appropriated by the town.
And I guess that's what, and I know it's not your issue. I'm trying to think about it from the town side of how we ensure it.
So I think we should cut it as a condition, but put it as a finding that the planning board will continue to pursue a CR on the property, on the open space portion of the property.
Just be a little careful, Greg. You've got to give yourself a little wiggle room in that.
Well, that's why I said pursue. I didn't say we're gonna
Right.
get it, but because if these other conservation groups aren't interested,
I'll call Wildlands Trust. I've worked with them before. You probably have too. But they're the only conservation group that I know. I'll have a conversation.
I'll start on the Audubon side.
Okay.
So I guess to move forward, Katie, we just, the town,
Yeah.
the powers that be dealing with this will have to just do their best to get a CR, because of the points you've made, that really is going to do what it should do in perpetuity.
Yes.
I don't think we're going to be able to condition it appropriately, because we could back ourselves into a corner and have a problem later on where, you know, we have eyes on this right now. And, you know, I know your eyes aren't going to go away from this, especially after tonight's discussion of making sure we pursue every avenue for that CR.
Yeah.
So would it be all right if Greg put it in the finding the way he proposed it?
Yes. Yep.
Okay.
All right, so Mike, I think once we hear from the public and stuff, the only other thing I have the board to think about is that sidewalk.
Where do they have it proposed on this plan?
So the sidewalk runs from Moraine Street up past the wooden barn, up to the trailhead about 450 feet up Red Gold Farm Road on the north side of the street.
Yeah.
He's got the little arrow. He's showing you up, going up around the drainage or the swale thing. then runs up along the street.
So I think at
Past
the
two
last meeting,
houses.
Greg, you mentioned that was a good idea because it's going to lead people right up to the public area and the trailhead.
It does lead the people that would be at the barn up to the trailhead. They're proposing a concrete sidewalk. So maybe if we don't do a concrete sidewalk, either asphalt or maybe even step it down to a stone dust. The trails themselves are gravel. They're not hard surfaces.
Yeah, but the house is right out in front of there. That's
There
putting
are
a stone.
two. There
Yeah,
are
but
two houses.
putting a stone dust sidewalk doesn't really work well. It's not going to get upkept at all.
Yeah, and then
Some kind of solid
we're going to have
surface.
concrete aprons if you go with the concrete versus
Yeah.
asphalt.
Kevin, is there any issue putting that sidewalk in? I think it really is a benefit, and it connects everything right in. It's not the whole road. It's a small section compared to what's in the rules and regs. Do you have any issue if we leave that?
No, I don't think that's not an issue. It's not a bad idea. I mean, people will probably park at the barn and maybe walk up. I was just looking. I don't know if we should have a little spot for a couple of cars to pull over up by where the trail starts too, perhaps. But I mean, I might be able to work out those details with Greg. But yeah, I would do that sidewalk. I prefer asphalt. It's a little less expensive. I actually think it looks nicer than the concrete, but no, I have no problem with that.
Yeah. Any of the board members have an issue with him keeping that in and doing it as asphalt?
I think asphalt could be fine. I mean, I think the way I was thinking about this sidewalk, the benefit, I was just thinking from like a bus stop perspective, kids at the end of the street kind of thing. So, I mean, but yeah, it would help the trails too.
Yeah. And so Nick, no issue with asphalt. Katie, any issue with asphalt?
No, I'm not super attached to the sidewalk, so.
Okay.
I'm good with the sidewalk, Mike.
Okay. Kevin, any issues?
No, works for me.
Okay, so we'll allow that sidewalk to stay, and you make it asphalt, Kevin.
All right.
Yeah, that works.
And then Greg, anything else?
No, Pat is not here. He's on vacation. We had addressed all of Pat's concerns, so I guess you can see what the public has to say.
Okay. Can you stop sharing the screen, Gabe, for a minute so I can see everyone else? Thank you. Is there anyone here from the public that'd like to speak on this? Just raise your hand so I can see you. I don't see anyone. Greg, do you?
No chat, no hands.
Okay. Are we just closing this meeting tonight and then we'll have the decision changed a little bit?
You can close the public hearing and we can work on, I mean, it sounds like there's a couple of changes, but
yeah,
for the most part, the document seems to be in pretty good shape.
So I'd like to see the association documents too, just before we sign off on everything. So if we could get that over, that'd be great.
Hello. Hey, Mike, there's a gentleman, Rick Sullivan, that has his hand raised.
Yep.
Yes.
Hi, Rick, just name and address if you could, please.
Yes, Rick Sullivan, 236 Moraine Street.
Hi.
And I, just for purposes of clarification, if you could reiterate what the consensus or what the finding was with respect to board member O'Donnell's recommendation and what is the board doing with that? Pursue, I understand that there's some confusion or there's an inability to do certain things as planning board versus the town. But what is the recommendation with respect to what board member O'Donnell?
Are you talking about the conservation restriction?
Exactly. I'm sorry.
Okay, so the new owner is going to deed that land over to the town, and then the town's going to pursue a conservation restriction instead of just having the Conservation Commission oversee it. So the conservation restriction could give it more protection in perpetuity, as Katie explained.
Okay.
That sound right, Katie?
No, it is. I just wanted to say the Conservation Commission would still oversee it, but a conservation restriction would be a third party that, oversees that as well. And
And so as I understand it then, just for clarification, the issue with getting a third party to oversee it is sometimes a difficult thing. Is that a fair statement?
That's a difficult part, correct?
Got it. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Rick.
And Rick, it's because they often want abutting to property to something they already own is one of their primary concerns. This is a fairly large piece of land. It has a river, a pond, wetlands, bogs, you name it, vernal pools. Hopefully we will be able to get Audubon or Wildlands Trust or somebody to join us with this.
Thank you.
Greg, sorry, if I could ask one more thing that I'm wondering about it is the funding associated with a CR. Is that also a lot of organizations, they want a certain amount, it's kind of to endow a CR, like it's being monitored in perpetuity. I have no idea what that amount would be, but if we could find a third party, would it be possible for that public benefit, like the sidewalk fund and the trail improvements, the amount that Kevin is contributing there, if we could find a third party, would there be a way to write it that a portion of those funds could be applied to a conservation restriction so that it could really be a partnership with the town? That if then we went to a town meeting for a conservation restriction on this, that we had part of the funding already there.
My one concern is that these raised walkways, the bridge installation and the sidewalk work is going to tap out the so-called public benefit side. I see what you're saying, that maybe if we have $1,000.
Oh, not adding it on top. I was wondering if it could come from that at all.
Right. Again, I think if it was a portion of the funds, then maybe the applicant's interested. I'm not sure, but my concern is when you don't know the number. Kevin, what was the conservation restriction cost for the most recent parcels that we approached CPC for?
I'm off the top of my head. Let me look it up. The last town meeting, you mean?
Yeah.
Let me look and see.
I mean, one thing about the some of the work that we're proposing, the public benefit work, it's all lineal. In other words, I mean, if you eliminate one piece of the sidewalk, now you've got kind of a broken system. You know what I mean? It all kind of works together to the sum of the parts is greater, you know what I mean, than the whole, really. I think if you take a piece out, it just kind of misses the mark. But I mean, I'd be willing to do that, but which piece do you take out?
Yeah. All right.
Yeah, I can't find it right now, Greg.
Okay. It was, I can't remember, unfortunately, off the top of my head. Let's see.
I still think this would be a great use of CPC funds.
Rick, do you have another question, or is it you forgot?
No, my hand's just stuck in the air though. Thanks so much. I don't know how to get my hand down.
We won't call on you again.
Just one other thing.
I found it, Kevin.
All right.
Okay.
It was for 2 conservation restrictions, 28,500.
So 1425 each.
Yeah.
Okay. But Katie, when you say it's a good use of the CPC funds, you said it was a good use of the CPC funds?
Yes.
So they're, that's how we've done them before in the past, right?
Yeah, so I'm thinking that that's how maybe like in those findings that we're talking about, if we said like that the planning board will pursue
so we
finding a third party holder for
planner to approach CPC and town meeting for funding for the conservation restriction.
I can be there.
That's what you mean. Yeah, I guess as soon as we find somebody who's interested in it, we can come up with those numbers, right?
Yeah, but we haven't asked anyone yet. We're saying that nobody would be interested, but I don't think this is going out to anyone. And it's a great parcel. So I think that it would interest some of these agencies.
Okay, great. Can you write that into the findings somehow, Greg?
We will write it in.
All right, sounds good there. Any other issues before I close the public hearing? And then Kevin, just so you know, I want to see those association docs before we sign anything here.
Okay, I was hoping we'd get a vote tonight, but when do you think we can? I'm under a little pressure here from the sellers.
We can do it at the next meeting. I don't see why not.
Okay, all right.
As long as you
That'll
give me those papers.
Yeah, well, I think I can do that.
Sometime that it's before the night before the meeting.
No, earlier than that. I'll give you 20 minutes.
Most people do.
Mike, is
Greg,
there any way to make it conditional?
I'm happy to make it conditional if you guys want me just to look at them. Any issue with that from anybody?
Yeah.
Okay, Greg, there's no issue with that, right?
Nope.
If I have-
I'll run the final version by everybody and ask them to email me directly, and then if there's no other comments.
Okay.
Okay.
All right, do we need 2 votes or can I do it all in one, Greg?
They're combined.
Okay. So first I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing for the WRPD and OSRD special permit Red Gold Farm. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred?
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Scott?
Scott DeCastro, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. So that hearing is closed. And then I'll make another motion that we approve the WRPD special permit and the OSRD special permit for Red Gold Farm as proposed tonight, pending our signatures on the final draft. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
I think Nick still missed one.
Yeah, I can't vote on
That's
this.
not voting on it. Okay, that's fine. Fred?
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
So Scott in on this one?
Yes.
Okay, Scott?
Scott DeCastro, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. Okay, so that passes 5-0, and we'll just wait to see the final version and get that signed on the next meeting.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Gabe. All right, moving on. Were there any minutes to actually approve or just as minutes? Nope, okay, not a problem. Skip that.
There, the A&R plan, Mike, is gonna be held because we needed some corrections on it and we have enough time to get to the next meeting.
Okay.
There is no minutes, as you mentioned. And then under board staff reports, Greg Gibbs has requested, he has submitted the check for the $23,000 that was originally for lot 10. He's asked if he could switch lot 10 for lot 13. So that was his request. Staff is okay with switching lots 10 for lot 13.
Does there need to be a vote or anything?
You should vote it, yes.
Okay. There's no issues with it at all, Greg, doing that?
No.
Okay. No. Any comments from the board at all? Okay.
No.
No.
Okay. I'll make a motion. Was there anyone from the public to speak on that? Okay, seeing none, I'll make a motion that we grant Greg Gibbs' request to swap out 10 and 13. Those are the correct lots, Greg?
Yep, from 10 to lot 13.
From lot 10 to lot 13. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye, Katie O'Donnell.
Nick?
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred?
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin?
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. Greg, that's all set. Thank you.
Okay, and then the last thing on the board staff reports from us is I had a resident request that our next meeting, the June 6th meeting, be a face-to-face meeting versus Zoom. I had explained to that person that the board had voted to stay Zoom as long as possible. The board was comfortable with Zoom. With the recent uptake in the COVID cases, et cetera, under this new variant, I figured it was safer to it. I did, as I told the resident, send an email out to each of you and ask you to each return to me specifically 4 of the 5 members were strongly in favor of staying in Zoom. The other member seemed like he was also in favor, but did not say, yes, I only want Zoom. So I was just gonna see if anybody had changed their minds or had any other thoughts. Otherwise, I will reply back to that resident that the meeting will stay Zoom.
Yeah, I think that's fine to stay Zoom. It's great to pull the board like that, just to know it's a different topic than what we normally deal with. So I think that's fine with me to stay Zoom.
Okay.
I agree. And I don't know if anybody has heard my many reasons, but I think that Zoom meetings are great. I think they open it up to a lot more people to be involved in the public hearing process and the boards and committees. I know I don't have kids, but I know that there are other people on our board who do. And if you can join a public hearing without having to find childcare or carry a kid around, I think that opens up things, but also for people who have health concerns or transportation issues. I think that Zoom meetings really actually level the playing field for a lot of people. And I think for planning purposes too, I like having applicants and Greg and Pat being able to zoom in on the exact plans so that we're all looking at the same thing at the same time instead of leafing through papers. I think it's been a huge improvement actually that I didn't anticipate, but that's my pitch for Zoom.
We've heard it before. I get it. Not a bad pitch. Greg, when does state law say we can keep doing it until right now?
I believe it's to the middle of July, Karen.
Yeah, I think it's July 15th.
July 15th at the moment.
So I guess depending on what happens with this outbreak, maybe it gets extended or not, but we'll see. We might all see each other in July.
Yes, we will have to find, we may have to change our meeting nights because we only have one real room right now, the select board's hearing room that is kind of set up for hybrids. So we will work on it and let you know.
Fred offered his living room, so we can all pack in there.
Okay.
Greg, anything else on the board report? I mean, the staff report, because I did have one thing to bring up on the board.
I'm all set, Karen. All right, Mike, it's up to you.
Yeah, so just real quick, something for thought for everybody. You know, I'm a builder in town. I've had a lot of issues come up with pre-existing non-conforming lots. And I did have a discussion with the building department about it and asked them, you know, roughly what they thought. And I'm not going to speak for them, but they did seem in favor of it. There's a lot of pre-existing non-conforming lots where somebody needs to go for a building permit and they need to file with ZBA. So, you know, they usually send a representative, they pay for them, they pay the $200 to ZBA. And I think there's a lot of cases where they're not making something more non-conforming that we could possibly change our regulations. I'm not sure where it is, Greg, that says they need to go to ZBA for any pre-existing non-conforming use. You know where that is in our zoning?
Not off the top of my head. I'll have to dig.
Okay, and I didn't bring this up to Greg yet, so it is kind of right off the top of my head. But I think there's an opportunity to really save the residents some time and some unneeded, you know, ZBA meetings. I don't think that need to happen necessarily. So maybe we could put this on for a, you know, for another discussion at some point. Greg can look into it a little bit further, and I'll talk to Greg exactly what my thoughts are, and then we can see if it's a good idea to make some kind of change or at least discuss the change.
So, Mike, that's typically on the lots that are 5,000 square feet, between 5,000 square feet and 10,000 square feet.
Oh, really, any of them. You know, one example is my own house. I put an addition. I have 2 acres of land, but I have a pork chop lot with 50 feet of frontage in R1. Now, up here on top of the hill where I'm at, I don't come anywhere near the lot lines, but I still had to go to ZBA just to get a building permit for the addition because I only had the 50 feet of frontage.
But you were a non-conforming pre-existing house.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think there's a couple other things in there, such as older houses that are close to the road. I have a resident that asked me about it, and she was looking to remove her current deck and put a deck with a roof over it. And the building permit said no. The building department said, no, you can't do that. You actually need a variance because she was too close to the street. But she has an antique house, and a lot of those antique houses are, right next to the street. So, there's a couple of things I think we could look at to help improve it for the residents. And a lot of other towns do it very differently than we do.
I think we have made some changes recently. Like, wasn't there a change for like handicapped wheelchair access ramps so that we weren't, people didn't have to file for those,
and even the egress stairs changed as well.
Yeah, so I think that I think that looking at it could certainly streamline some things, possibly.
Yeah, so I'll talk to Greg. Just wanted to bring it up quickly tonight. We had a shorter agenda, and I figured we could have another discussion when Greg is up to speed on what I'm looking to do. So, all right. Any other board issues?
Nope.
Okay, I see Lynn's on here. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Hi, everybody.
Hello.
Hey, welcome.
Sorry it took a little while. I have a wedding for my daughter on Saturday, and the bug guy was coming out.
Not a problem.
So nice to see everybody.
All right. Thanks for joining us.
I'd like to encourage you to keep working together, and those comments that Mike just made were real legitimate comments. So just work hard on that stuff, and I'll be watching. It'll be fun.
Right. Thank you.
So thank you.
Okay. Anything else on the board? If not, I'll make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting. All right. Is there a second?
Second, Katie O'Donnell. Aye. Katie O'Donnell.
Nick.
Nick Papastratus, aye.
Fred.
Fred Monaco, aye.
Kevin.
Kevin Cantwell, aye.
Scott.
Scott Castro, aye.
And Mike Viviano, aye. All right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
All right. Good night.
Bye.
Have a good night.
Right.